Statement. The Chief Secretary for Administration will make a statement on the consultation document on the methods for selecting the Chief Executive in 2017 and for forming the Legislative Council in 2016. In accordance with Rule 28.2 of the Rules of Procedure, members may put to the public officer making the statement short and succinct questions, provided that they are relevant to the statement, but no debate may arise on the statement. The Chief Secretary for Administration. Mr. President, today, the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region Government publishes the consultation document on the methods for selecting the Chief Executive in 2017 and for forming the Legislative Council in 2016 to formally commence a 5-month public consultation exercise. To show our respect and sincerity towards the Legislative Council, I take this very first opportunity to attend the LegCo to make the following statement. First of all, the design and establishment of any political structure have to have regard to the historical background of the relevant place and with the constitutional basis and the characteristics of that place as the foundation. Therefore, when we discuss the methods for selecting the Chief Executive, the CE, by universal suffrage in 2017 and for forming the LegCo in 2016, we have to consider the historical background of the establishment of the Hong Kong SAR, understand the unique constitutional status of the Hong Kong SAR, and comprehend the legal framework based on the Basic Law and the relevant interpretation and decisions of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, the NPCSC. After the signing of the Sino-British Joint Declaration, the state established the Hong Kong SAR pursuant to the Constitution of the People's Republic of China and enacted the Basic Law after extensive consultations so as to prescribe the systems to be implemented in the Hong Kong SAR. In order to ensure the implementation of the basic policies of the state regarding Hong Kong, the overall objective is to maintain the long-term prosperity and stability of Hong Kong. The Basic Law prescribes the various systems to be implemented in the Hong Kong SAR, including the methods for selecting the CE and for forming the LegCo. Article 45 and Article 68 of the Basic Law stipulate, respectively, that in the light of the actual situation in the Hong Kong SAR and in accordance with the principle of gradual and orderly progress, the ultimate aim is to achieve the selection of the CE by universal suffrage upon nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee in accordance with democratic procedures and the election of all the members of the LegCo by universal suffrage. As a matter of fact, since the establishment of the Hong Kong SAR, the political structure of Hong Kong has been developing towards the ultimate aim of universal suffrage in accordance with the Basic Law. As stipulated by the Basic Law, the office of the CE is filled by a Chinese citizen who is a permanent resident of the Hong Kong SAR, and there have since been 4 elections. The size of the election committee has also expanded from 400 members of the selection committee in 1996 gradually to 800 of the election committee in 2002 and 1,200 in 2012. As regards the LegCo, the number of seats returned by direct geographical constituency GC elections has gradually increased from 20 in 1998 to 35 in 2012. In addition, the 5 new functional constituency FC seats created in 2012 returned members through election on the basis of one person, one vote by some 3.2 million registered voters who previously did not have a vote in the traditional FCs. Since 2004, there have been extensive and specific discussions in the community of Hong Kong on how to amend the methods for selecting the CE and for forming the LegCo and on issues relating to the universal suffrage. According to the Basic Law and the 2004 NPCSC interpretation, amendments to the method of selection or formation have to go through the 5-step process according to the law. First step, the CE to make a report to the NPCSC so as to invite the NPCSC to decide whether it is necessary to amend the method of selection or formation. Second step, the NPCSC to make a determination on whether any amendment to the method of selection or formation may be made. Third step, if the NPCSC determines that amendments to the method of selection or formation may be made, the Hong Kong SAR government to introduce to the LegCo a resolution on the amendments to the method for selecting the CE and method for forming the LegCo to be passed by a 2/3 majority of all LegCo members. Fourth step, the CE to consent to the resolution as passed by the LegCo. And fifth step, the CE to lodge the relevant bill to the NPCSC for approval of all the record. Therefore, to successfully implement universal suffrage for the CE in 2017, the central authorities, the Hong Kong SAR government, the LegCo, as well as the Hong Kong general public, all have their respective important roles to play. In December 2007, the NPCSC adopted a decision that clearly provides a timetable for universal suffrage in Hong Kong. That is, the election of the CE in the year 2017 may be implemented by the method of universal suffrage, and after the CE is selected by universal suffrage, the election of the LegCo may be implemented by the method of electing all members by universal suffrage. This part of the historical account from the enactment of the Basic Law stipulating the ultimate aim of universal suffrage and up to the decision adopted by the NPCSC in 2007 providing for a timetable for universal suffrage fully demonstrates the determination and commitment of the central authorities towards universal suffrage in the Hong Kong SAR. President, the 2007 NPCSC decision is an important milestone in the constitutional development of Hong Kong. It's also an important step towards universal suffrage for Hong Kong. I can still recall that when I, as the then Secretary for Development, attended a briefing session at the Government House together with colleagues and heard Mr. Chow Xiaoyang, the then Deputy Secretary General of the NPCSC, saying that Hong Kong had her own timetable for universal suffrage. I was very excited and looked forward to its fruition. The year 2017 would be the first time that the CE of the Hong Kong SAR... Sorry? Chief Secretary? Mr. Wong Yok-man, if you still yell in your seat, I'll immediately order you to leave the chamber. Chief Secretary. The year 2017 will be the first time that the CE of the Hong Kong SAR is to be returned by the method of universal suffrage. The ultimate aim of universal suffrage for the CE as stipulated in the Basic Law is just round the corner. In the course of attaining the ultimate aim of universal suffrage and in devising a model for implementing universal suffrage, we must ensure that the relevant selection of formation methods are consistent with the basic policies of the state regarding Hong Kong, and the 4 key principles on constitutional development under the Basic Law are conformed to. That is, first, meeting the interest of different sectors of the community. Second, facilitating the development of the capitalist economy. Third, gradual and orderly progress. And fourth, appropriate to the actual situation of the Hong Kong SAR. According to the Basic Law and the 2004 NPCSC interpretation, the 5-step process must be followed in amending the methods for selecting the CE and for forming the LegCo. They are the necessary constitutional procedure that we need to go through. In handling issues relating to constitutional development, the central authorities, the CE, the Hong Kong SAR government, the LegCo, and indeed all sectors of the community must strictly follow the law. The Hong Kong SAR government is devoted and determined to successfully implement the universal suffrage for the CE in 2017. In his manifesto and his first policy address after taking office, the CE had clearly pointed out that acting strictly in accordance with the Basic Law and relevant decisions of the NPCSC, he would strive to secure support from the central authorities and members of the LegCo and to forge consensus and take forward the accomplishment of the aim of universal suffrage. Since taking office, the CE and his team have been maintaining communications and dialogues with various sectors of the community to understand their positions and listen to their views in order to lay a good foundation for the consultation on constitutional development. In October this year, the CE announced the establishment of the Task Force on Constitutional Development led by me to prepare for the launch of the public consultation on constitutional development. As the Chief Secretary of Administration, I'm delighted to take up the important task to achieve our shared vision of universal suffrage for the people of Hong Kong. Today, the government publishes the consultation document to formally commence the preparation for the constitutional procedure as a first step to take forward the amendments of the method of selection and formation. The period of consultation is a full 5 months, which is slightly longer than other public consultation exercises. Constitutional development is an important issue as well as an issue of great concern of the entire community. Therefore, we deliberately reserve sufficient time for the community to have full discussions with a view to forging consensus. The consultation document sets out the background and principles of constitutional development in Hong Kong, as well as certain key issues relating to the method of selection and formation under the framework of the Basic Law and the relevant NPCSC interpretation and decisions to consult the public. The key issues relating to the method for selecting the CE include size and composition of the nominating committee, the electorate base of the NC, method for forming the NC, procedure for the NC to nominate CE candidates, voting arrangements for electing the CE by universal suffrage, procedure for appointing the CE and the linkage with local legislation, and political affiliation of the CE. The key issues relating to the method for forming the LegCo include number of seats and composition of the LegCo, composition and electorate base of the FCs, and the number of GCs and the number of seats in each GC. During the 5-month period of public consultation, we welcome the people of Hong Kong and different sectors of the community to have focused discussions on issues relating to the method of selection and formation. We will extensively collect views and suggestions from members of the community, and after the consultation period, faithfully summarize and consolidate the views and suggestions so received so as to assist the CE to make a report to the NPCSC to commence the constitutional procedures on the constitutional development of Hong Kong. During this period, the 3 members of the Task Force on Constitutional Development, as well as the entire team of politically appointed officials and relevant civil service colleagues, will have exchanged with and directly listened to views from people and organizations from different sectors of the community. Mr. President, the public consultation launched today is the preparatory work to commence the 5-step process. To successfully implement universal suffrage for the CE, we have to complete all the steps in accordance with the legal procedure, of which the most crucial step is to secure the passage by a 2/3 majority of all the members of the LegCo. In 2005, the proposal put forward by the then HKSAR government, though supported by a majority of the public, did not ultimately obtain enough votes in the LegCo, resulting in an impasse in the constitutional development of Hong Kong. With a pragmatic and accommodating approach adopted by all of us, the 2010 constitutional development proposals were passed by more than 2/3 of all members of the LegCo, obtained the consent of the CE, and received the approval or record by the NPCSC respectively. And the 5-step process was historically completed. Today, we have formally stepped onto the straight road of welcoming universal suffrage. According to the 2007 NPCSC decision, the selection of the CE by universal suffrage is a precondition for the election of all members of the LegCo by universal suffrage. We need all members here, people across the political spectrum, as well as various sectors of the community, to work together to forge consensus. I would like to take this opportunity to urge all members here, all political parties, as well as the public at large, to adopt an accommodating, rational, and pragmatic approach, as well as an inclusive attitude, to seek common ground, and with the deepest sincerity to forge the biggest consensus so that the universal suffrage for the CE in 2017, a common aspiration for all, could be implemented successfully. Mr. President, leaders of the state have repeatedly stressed that it is the sincere wish of the central authorities that Hong Kong could implement universal suffrage for the CE in 2017 in accordance with the basic law and decisions of the NPCSC. This is also the constitutional responsibility of the Hong Kong SARG and a common aspiration of the people of Hong Kong. As to how it could be implemented on the basis of the basic law and the NPCSC decisions, I hope that different sectors of the community and the public at large could give us your views. We understand that constitutional development has always been a controversial and extremely complicated issue. We will not underestimate the difficulties of this task, nor will we evade them. As the CE said the other day, the year 2017 will be a historic moment for Hong Kong to have a chance to achieve universal suffrage for the CE. Faced with such a duty, any political figure, including himself, will do his utmost to carry out the task. The Hong Kong SAR government would do all it can to carry out the consultation exercise and all the subsequent works. With the concerted efforts by all of us, differences can be narrowed step by step and consensus forged bit by bit. Today, the Hong Kong SAR government, through the publication of the consultation document and the commencement of the consultation exercise, is taking the first step. The future is in our hands. For the purpose of achieving universal suffrage and for the future of Hong Kong, I sincerely hope that people of Hong Kong, especially all members here, could work together to forge consensus through rational and pragmatic discussions and with an open and accommodating mind. Thank you, Mr. President.
Now, on the basis of the order of members pressing the request to speak buttons, I will invite members to ask questions. But I must remind members that you should just ask short and succinct questions, and you should refrain from making a statement. Ms. Emily Lau. Paragraph 22 of the statement. The Chief Secretary said that differences can be narrowed step by step and consensus forged bit by bit. Thus, do the CES and the administration realize that in the public opinion polls over the years and in the elections over the years, the majority of the people of Hong Kong want universal suffrage? That's also the demand of the pan-democratic camp. We want true universal suffrage. But then for the loyalist camp, they want to have screened elections. So how are we going to narrow the differences? Thanks, Chief Secretary. Thank you, President. Thank you, Ms. Emily Lau, for your question. In 2007, the MPCSC has already laid down the timetable for universal suffrage. We are now on the straight path to universal suffrage. And as to how we can do it, we have to adopt an accommodating and sincere attitude in narrowing our differences and forging the consensus that we need. But I must stress again, for universal suffrage, it has to be in accordance with the law. So that's why later on, when we publish a consultation document, we will explain in detail the constitutional development of Hong Kong and also the principles to be followed in designing the constitutional system. If we go by the legal basis and we adopt an accommodating approach, then I'm sure we could narrow the differences and forge the consensus we need, as mentioned in paragraph 22. Mr. Wong Kwok Hing. President, in paragraph 19 of the statement, the Chief Secretary said today is a historical moment. We have formally stepped onto the path towards a universal suffrage. So how can we ensure that there won't be detours, there won't be retrograde steps, and we won't be heading for a cul-de-sac as we embark on this path towards universal suffrage? And more importantly, how can we make sure we comply with the 2007 MPCSC decision? Now, for this constitutional basis, is there any plan on the part of the administration to explain to all sectors of the community, in particular the schools and so on, to explain what the constitutional basis is and that we will be heading for a path straight ahead towards a universal suffrage? There won't be any detour. Now, as we embark on this straight path towards the universal suffrage of the CE election, we need to have some common ground. Some in the community usually is described as a legal basis or legal framework or the track. However you describe that, as we discuss how we could achieve universal suffrage for EC election, it is important that we have common ground. Otherwise, it will be, as Mr. Wong Kwok Hing said, we might take a detour. So that's why we have allowed sufficient time for consultation, because we need, for these important legal basis, it's important that we spell it out clearly in the first stage of the consultation. So the task force formed by the three of us, for the entire political team of political appointed officials and all civil servants, will work very hard to achieve that. Mr. Michael Tian. Well, I have a short-term question, President. Can I ask the Chief Secretary this? During the consultation period, would you have constructive communication with the liaison office? If so, what is the definition of communication or interference? How can we ensure that there is implementation of one country, two systems? Chief Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Tan. Communication is important. Now, in this very important issue of universal suffrage for the CE election, the Central People's Government has its constitutional duty, status, and function. As the CPG's representative in Hong Kong, if we have communication with the liaison office, is only reasonable, but then members have to have confidence as well. If we have to complete the 5-step process, the most important challenge is to secure 2/3 majority support in this council. And I've heard members' views on many occasions, and of course members' views would be swayed by the public views. So that's why the most important communication task in this exercise is communication with the general public. But of course, I also attach importance to communication with this Council. Mr. Ronnie Tong, President, in paragraph 16 of the Chief Secretary's statement, it mentions that the scope of consultation relates to the method for forming the electrical. Here, the scope for consultation, is it really about the ultimate universal suffrage for forming the electrical, or just the election method for the 2016 electrical election? Because it's the latter. There's no mention of the split group voting system. For the 2016 electrical election, shouldn't split voting be included under A, B, C? How come it's not included? Chief Secretary, in paragraph 16 of the statement, the key issues relating to the method for forming the electrical, I'm talking about the election method for the 2016 electrical election. As I mentioned, for the 2020 electrical election method, in particular, for the electrical 2020 electrical election, we want full universal suffrage. There must be a precondition. That is, in 2017, we are able to achieve universal suffrage for the CE election. Now, in the statement, whether it's about the electrical election methods or the CE election, these are all key issues. We keep an open mind in the first stage of consultation. So what is not included in my statement, various sectors, including electrical members, could express views on those issues. But perhaps I could also disclose here, in the consultation document, the voting method is not what we consider to be a key issue. Sorry, Mr. Ronnie Tong, I could only allow members to ask questions once. The consultation is only just started. As pointed out in the Chief Secretary's statement, there are still a few months. So I believe there will be sufficient time for members and among themselves and for members with the government to have exchanges. Mr. Tam Yu Chung. President, the Chief Secretary stressed that the universal suffrage must be in accordance with the basic law requirements and the 2007 MPCSC decision. If during the consultation period there are views expressed that go entirely against these two items, you can tell right away is a complete departure from those two requirements. If that's the case, how would you handle such views? Would you point out to those involved that your suggestion is not in line with the legal basis, or would you still include such views not in line with the legal basis in your report? Chief Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Tam Yu Chung, for your question. Now, we have stressed that for this consultation, we keep an open mind, but at the same time, we have the duty to point out that as we try to strive for universal suffrage for the election in 2017, it has to be in line with the legal basis I mentioned, and Mr. Tam Yu Chung just repeated the basis. So in the first stage of the consultation, in this 5-month period, we will not come up with our own proposals. And the views expressed by members, bodies, and various sectors of the community, we will not comment specifically on such views expressed, because if we do so, then we may give the impression that we already have a preconceived position. But Mr. Tam Yu Chung is right to point out that if in the 5-month consultation period we come across views that a total departure of from the legal state basis, then as the task force in charge of the consultation exercise, we ought to give some reminders. Otherwise, the entire consultation exercise could not be focused, I'm afraid. And we may be wasting time during this 5-month consultation period. So in response to Mr. Tam Yu Chung's question, at an appropriate juncture, we'll do as we've done for the consultation document. We will spell out the important legal basis and the principles. Thank you. Ms. Sit Ho. Now, in 1998, we had direct elections under the Hong Kong British administration days, and then we also had the Article 23 consultation. Members, please do not make a statement. I will continue. Members, please come to your question. Many in the community believe that to faithfully sum up views. That's actually a distortion of the consultation findings and public views. So would the administration announce as soon as possible for the public's public information data, how are you going to measure views? What about one letter per person? What about the weight given to views expressed by legal bodies or those by children's choirs? And would you publish all the submissions received also that there's no misunderstanding? Please, member, come to your question. Because the public wouldn't want to be fooled again by the administration. Ms. Hill, please take your seat. So, Chief Secretary, will you please tell us whether you will immediately announce the way you will measure public views? If I may remind members again, please do not make a statement as you ask a question. If you comment on various aspects of the government, and I do not allow the government official a chance to respond, it won't be fair. But then it's stated clearly in the rules of procedure that for a statement made by an official for this item, there should not be a debate. So members, please, as you ask questions, refrain from stating your own views.
Chief Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. I can tell Ms. Ho that, as usual, upon completion of the consultation exercise, will be faithfully summarize and consolidate the views. Say, for example, with the agreement or without objection from the commenter, we will be making public the views collected. And all the views consolidated will also be published. So everything will be carried out in a high degree of transparency. I'm sure the public at large will be able to judge the consultation exercise as well as the summaries of the exercise. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, in paragraph 6 of the paper, mention is made about the 5-step process. The consultation exercise will last for 5 months, and then the CS4A has said that there will be a report faithfully summarizing the views, and then the CE will make a report to the NPCSC, and then I think in that report there will be a specific option. I want to know whether there will be another round of consultation in relation to the report to be made to the NPCSC so that there will be formal consultation. CS4A. Mr. President, let me explain once again. In the so-called first step, the CE will make a report to the NPCSC so as to invite the NPCSC to decide whether it is necessary to amend the method of selection or formation. Therefore, the views to be collected will focus on the necessity or otherwise of amending the method of selection or formation. In our document, we don't propose any specific options. Mr. Sin would like to know whether there will be another round of consultation before a specific plan is drawn up. This will be done as usual. We estimate that in the year of 2014, in the second half of 2014, we hope that prior to the third step, we can carry out the second round of consultation. Dr. Kee Kwok. Mr. President, the Community of Hong Kong have been waiting for 20 years to have universal suffrage in 2017. In 2005, in 2010, we didn't get what we wanted, and that wasn't what the public would like to get, and that's not public opinion. In your consultation document, CS4A, you have said that there won't be any specific options. In fact, over 60% of the community, please ask your question. Yes, I'm going to ask the question. The community would like to have public nomination. Over 60% of those interviewed would like to have this. Now, if the CS4A is not going to give a positive or a direct answer, then would you agree that this is a fake consultation? In fact, this is against our wish to have more democracy and against the wish to have a wider basis for nomination so that we have true universal suffrage. CS4A, the objective, the aim of having universal suffrage has been upheld, and the timetable has also been given, and you see it in the paper before you, and that's in the NPCSC's decision. What we want to do now is that we would like to get more views from the community so that we can forge a consensus in the community so that for the strict road, it can lead us to the aim of universal suffrage. Thank you. Dr. K.K. Kwok, the CS4A has answered your question. Please be seated. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paragraph 15 of the Secretary's speech, she sets out 7 points, 7 issues in relation to the selection of the CE. What worries us most is the 4th one, procedure for the nominating committee to nominate CE candidates. The CS4A said that she would like to consult the public, but then have to ask the central authorities as what is meant by democratic procedures. You talk about the procedures. I think that should be the democratic procedures. Have you ever asked the CPG as what's meant by democratic procedures? CS4A. For Mr. Leung's question, I thank him for the question. If you have noted the speech from Mr. Li Fei, who is the NPCSC Deputy Secretary General and the Basic Law Committee Chairman. In fact, at a luncheon, Mr. Li Fei made a speech, and then a copy of the speech was made public. Mr. Li Fei has said that in the next round of consultation, and indeed the consultation that we are formally starting today, what has to be discussed in depth is the specific arrangements within the framework of basic law, including the democratic procedures for the nominating committee to nominate CE candidates. Therefore, for the implementation details of the democratic procedure for the NC to nominate CE candidates, that will be the subject matter of this round of consultation. Mr. Leung Chi-Cheng. Mr. President, I would like to ask the CS4A this question. In your statement, you have said that there are 7 key issues for consultation in relation to the selection of the CE. I read the 7 points when compared with what Mr. Li Fei has said last month. He's the NPCSC Deputy Secretary General. Mr. Li talked about the CE post holder should be someone who loves the country and Hong Kong, but this is absent from the 7 issues here. Why? Secretary. The CE should be a person who loves the country and Hong Kong. I don't think it should not be one of the key issues for the method for selecting the CE. I think the words don't appear in the consultation document. It is easy to understand. Under the basic law, the CE has got a constitutional duty. The CE should be a person who loves the nation, who loves Hong Kong, and it is only obvious, so it is implied, it is understood. The CE has got 2 roles. First of all, he is accountable to the Hong Kong SAR, and he's also accountable to the Central People's Government of the PRC. And the Central People's Government, the central authorities appoint him, and he has to implement the basic law. Under Article 48, there are lots of duties to be carried out by the CE. If the CE post holder is someone who confronts the CPG and is not someone who loves the country and Hong Kong, then it will be difficult for him to meet the requirements of the basic law. Dr. Priscilla Leung. To have universal suffrage in the selection of CE in 2017, timetable and efficiency would be important. In paragraph 15, time and again, the CS4A would once again like us to talk about the nomination committee. So can the CS4A tell us clearly that things like direct nomination by the public without involving the nominating committee would be going astray, and it will not be in line with the strict rule leading us to universal suffrage under the framework of the basic law? Well, after the consultation exercise has started, we will not try to comment on the proposals suggested by the committee. So for Article 45, I think the requirement is very clear. That's in relation to the selection of the CE. And in fact, we have to take into account the actual situation in Hong Kong, and in accordance with the principle of gradual and orderly progress. The ultimate aim is the selection of CE by universal suffrage upon nomination by broadly representative nominating committee in accordance with the democratic procedures. When Mr. Li Fei answered a question from the media, well, it's a matter of a nominating committee. Mr. Yip Kin Yun Mr. President, CS4A mentioned about the method of forming the LegCo in 2016, and she mentioned about the split voting. I know that split voting has got nothing to do with the method for forming the LegCo. However, there is a direct relationship here. Mr. Yip, please do not make your comments. Please ask your question. My question is simple. Now, among the key issues, I want to know why split voting is not being covered. Now, if the members of the public would like to comment on this issue, I want to know whether the administration will try to consider the matter fully.
CS. Mr. President, as I said just now, we adopted the most open attitude in the first round of consultation. In my statement, be it the CE election or the LegCo election, I already raised some important issues. We will not preempt what members of the public and LegCo members in raising their own comments and views and questions, and will collate all views collected honestly. Mr. Charles Mock. Mr. President, this year said that this consultation period is 5 months in duration, so we'll have ample time. In fact, many members of the public are concerned about the functional constituencies, which they want to abolish. We may not have enough time to discuss that because all of us will focus on the CE election. So CS, my questions are, in 2016, can you abolish all FCs? If that's not possible, can you consider a route map for 2020 to abolish the FCs? And please do not move the goalposts and adopt delaying tactics. CS, just now I already said that concerning the 2020 LegCo election, the election method is not the issue of this consultation document, nor the work of this term of the SARG. Because in 2020, for universal suffrage for the LegCo election, there's a pretext, and that's precisely our focus today. That is, in 2017, we must have universal suffrage for the CE election. Mr. Aberto, Mr. President, in paragraph 22 of the statement of the CS, it is said that differences can be narrowed step by step and consensus forged bit by bit. Now, in paragraph 22, I believe the differences and consensus referred thereto are technical issues, because social consensus has already been formed very, very early. That is, to have no screening mechanism for universal suffrage for the 2017 CE election. CS, do you agree that that's already a social consensus? So paragraph 22 is only about the technicalities as to how to implement a genuine universal suffrage. CS, well, I cannot fully agree with Mr. Ho. Otherwise, our work will be much simpler. No doubt, we already have a target for universal suffrage for the CE election, and we already have a timetable. But to attain that objective, there are complicated and legal issues for us to forge consensus. For example, in the past few months, we heard a number of options from the public. This is not a very simple technical matter. Otherwise, it will only be about the operations, actual operations of the election. We have these legal and political issues. Whether or not any suggestion is supported by the general public and by a two-thirds majority of LegCo members in this chamber is not as simple as a technical issue. Mr. Dennis Kwok, Mr. Kenneth Chan, well, we're all concerned about universal suffrage, but whether it is a false or genuine universal suffrage. Steps are mentioned in the statement of the CS, but the ICCP Article 25 has not been mentioned, and that's a principle. CS, in the upcoming consultation document on constitutional development, is that principle important? And is it a yardstick to measure whether or not we have genuine or false universal suffrage? CS, I believe it is very difficult to have a uniform yardstick for universal suffrage. For the United Nations, any signatory jurisdictions will have to give consideration to social, cultural, political background as well as actual circumstances. That's why in paragraph 2 of my statement, I review history and our constitutional functions together with you. And precisely because of this, any design and implementation of constitutional reform will have to take into account the historical background of the jurisdiction concerned, Hong Kong in this case, so the constitutional basis and special characteristics of the SARG have to be taken into account, and that is a guiding principle in this exercise. Mr. Ip got him. Thank you, Mr. President. In paragraph 19 of our statement, the CS that were formally stepped onto the straight road of welcoming universal suffrage. I very much agree with him. Whether or not to have in 2017 universal suffrage for CE election, that's all our aspiration. In her statement, the CE has set out for the CE 7 points to note. What about the 6th term there? The key issues there. Can the CS elaborate on the procedure for appointing the CE and the linkage with local legislation? What actual contents was her referring to? CS? Mr. President, I'd like to thank Mr. Ip Got Him for his question. Be it under the Basic Law or the NPCSE decision, it's clearly stipulated that the CE elected has to be appointed by the Central People's Government. This is a political appointment, and that also may mean non-appointment. Therefore, in point F here, if one day we elect a CE that is not appointed by the CPG, then what will happen to local legislation? That is, do we need to regulate under the CE election ordinance? If by the 1st of July we don't have a CE appointed by the CPG, what should happen? Should there be a re-election? If so, what arrangements should be made? So that's what I meant there. Mr. Frederick Fong, Mr. President, with 2 experiences for constitutional development. 2005, a failure experience. In 2015, I don't think any politician or political party will accept that failure. Now, for this 5-month consultation period, are you rejecting another consultation possibility? That is, with the Central Committee comprising all stakeholders, including electoral members, scholars, and the SARG, so as to work out a consensus? And that's a similar scheme as what happened to the Basic Law. Have you actually ruled out this possibility? Yes. The SARG has the constitutional responsibility to have universal suffrage for 2017 CE election. And it's also an emphasis of this term of the SARG. So this 3-member task force will, as far as we can, do this consultation work well. Mr. Frederick Fong mentioned all sectors of the community, organizations, the general public, etc. The views and suggestions made by them have precisely to go through our hard work so that we can collate them and forge consensus so as to attain universal suffrage in the 2017 CE election. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung. Mr. President, in paragraph 15 of a statement, the CS clearly points out that the nomination must be made by the nominating committee. So, yes, does it mean that you have already excluded legitimate nominees if they're not nominated by the electing committee? Universal suffrage is our ultimate goal, which is to be attained by a gradual and orderly approach. Is this an ultimate process, or will there be another stage in the process? Yes. President, first of all, I have to point out, for the 2017 CE election, we'll have universal suffrage with nominations by the nominating committee in a democratic process. This is stipulated very clearly in Article 45 of the Basic Law, and is also a guiding legal principle this time. This is very important. So we must act in accordance with the Basic Law. Of course, in accordance with democratic procedures, the nominating committee may comprise a great deal of democratic elements, and there are a lot of issues to be explored together. In any way, we would like to have universal suffrage for the 2017 CA election. As for the details and salient points set out in paragraph 15, there will be the major issues in this first round of consultation. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan.
Chief Secretary, earlier when you answered the question, you said in the consultation document you won't mention love Hong Kong, love country. But then loving Hong Kong, loving the country, and not opposing the CPG, that's an implicit condition. So how do you implement the implicit condition? Would this be a consultation for universal suffrage, or would this be a consultation for screening out someone? That is the implicit condition you mentioned, screening out the voters. You said we're now on the home stretch to universal suffrage, but I see this as an obstacle course. So would this be a consultation for universal suffrage or for selection or screening out candidates? Chief Secretary, members of the nominating committee, and for every voter in the universal suffrage, they will have to make their own choices. I'm sure for all members of the nominating committee and all members of the public, they have the wisdom to exercise their rights properly. Dr. Helena Wong. President, can I ask the Chief Secretary this? Paragraph 16 of the statement, the method for forming the electoral, the composition of functional constituencies. Would you also consult the public whether the new super district council constituencies would be kept? And in your mind, how are you going to broaden the representativeness of FCs? Do you have any ideas? Chief Secretary, we do not have any position on such issues. We welcome views from members of the public and this Council on these issues. Mr. Alan Leung, paragraph 6 of the statement, the 5-step process. First step, on which day would you take the first step? And therefore, between the second and the third step, the Chief Secretary said that it would be approximately in the second half of 2014, there would be concrete election methods and options for consultation. How long would that consultation last? And third step, when would that third step be taken? Chief Secretary. Thank you, President. For the first round of consultation, it will go until the 3rd of May next year. And in this stage of consultation, we're sure there will be overwhelming response. The SL government is bound to receive a large body of views. Now, Mr. Raymond Tam and his team are known for their efficiency, but still, I think it would take us some 2 months to come up with a faithful report. And the report will be submitted to the CE4 presentation to the NPCSC. And as we said earlier, as the NPCSC takes the second step, it won't take too long. From past experience, if there's anything to go by, it won't take too long. So in the second half of 2014, we should be able to start the second stage of consultation. That is to pave the way for the third step, that is for the SAR government to submit a proposal to this council. At this stage, truly, we haven't decided how long the second round of consultation would take. But we hope that by the end of 2014, we could complete the second round of consultation, and that will allow us time to submit proposal to this council for voting on. Because, you know, there is still the local legislative exercise that has to be undertaken going forward. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, paragraph 15 mentions the size and composition of the nominating committee and also the electorate base of the nominating committee, the public will be able to give views on these issues. What about the size of the nominating committee? Have you already set a cap? And composition, what about the from the political sector? Maybe there's no room for discussion. So have you already set some parameters? So this is not a truly open public consultation. Chief Secretary, thank you, Mr. Wu, for your question. Now, as I said, in this consultation, we'll keep an open mind, but then there are certain issues that we have to explain things to the public because there is a legal basis to go by. Take on the composition of the nominating committee, in the 2007 MPCSC decision, it is stated that we have to refer to the broad representation of the existing nominating committee. And the interpretation of making reference, as Mr. Qiao Xiaoyang said earlier, there has to be some binding effect, but then having regard to the circumstances, there could be some adjustments too. Then Mr. Li Fei came to Hong Kong recently. He was asked a similar question, and he used a legal term that he used a term that there has to be a certain degree of consistency in determining the composition of the nominating committee. In any case, this is an open or public consultation, and we are only too happy to listen to views expressed by all sectors. Mr. Raymond Wong. Oh, so it's more or less the same. That means that you could wrap up your work. 5-step process. Is it really step by step or part by part? Is that a point of order? Chief Secretary, can you please explain? Usually, by 5-step process, or how many step of process, usually is the Chinese character bo, which means part. But here, for your 5-step process in Chinese, you put it under quotes. Now, Mr. Raymond Wong, as you know, in Hong Kong these days, people like to put a quote for a word to change the proper use of a word. It's exactly. That's why it's not a proper consultation that you're trying to hit under the belt. Have you asked a question? No, I haven't come to your question. I was just asking you a question because your Chinese is better than mine, but you have said it's supposed to be the 5-step process. The step in Chinese, it should be bo, which means part, not step. Now, the 2004 MPCSC interpretation ruled out universal suffrage from 2007-2008, and then the 2007 MPCSC decision ruled out 2012 the universal suffrage. Now, I won't criticize you because you just listen to your boss. But anyway, if the consultation findings that the mainstream view is that Mr. Albert Ho must resign to initiate referendum, or there won't be 5-step process, or it's not in line with the MPCSC decision, then what do? Is it the case that even if more than half of the people of Hong Kong ask for a public nomination without any screening, and there should be one person, one vote election for CE, you will still oppose it? Is that the case? Mr. Raymond Wong, please take your seat. Mr. Ip Kok Him, the choice of words by the member, is it appropriate? Is it offensive or rude or insulting? Mr. Guang Yim asked a question. Well, this is not the first time we see this in this council. And if I may take this opportunity to remind members, as members speak, they should not use offensive or insulting words against other members or officials. But at the same time, as members are fully aware of this, if in the past some members did so and other members pointed that out, the usual approach is to suspend the meeting, and then I will require the relevant member to consider retracting his remarks. But as you know, not long ago, at one of the chief executive's question and answer session, this happened, and I decided not to suspend the meeting on that occasion because it's live broadcast session, and the public would expect us to make full use of the time available for government officials to answer questions. They don't want to listen to us arguing over whether some offensive words should be withdrawn or not. And I hope members agree to this approach. So for members waiting to speak, please refrain from making offensive or insulting remarks. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, what's your point? Speaking the truth, is that an insult against others? Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, what you said is already offensive. Please take a seat. If there continues to be offensive or insulting remarks, and the way you handle it, would it not encourage people to do so? Now, members, of course, are free to raise this point, and at this council, I will make a decision that I consider appropriate. Now, Mr. Raymond Wong asked a question. Chief Secretary, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, Mr. Wong Kwok-hing. The member has already left the chamber. That is the member who asked the question. Does it mean that the question doesn't have to be answered? Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, if you are familiar with the rules of procedures here, after a member has asked a question as to whether the official would give an answer or not has got nothing to do with the presence or otherwise of that member in the chamber. Mr. Chen Kem-lam, point of order. You said that we would like to have sufficient time to deal with the current issue, and therefore we should not deal with possibly offensive language. I'm afraid this is going to ruin the rules of procedure. I think you need to deal with it. Yes, I've heard members' criticism. CS4A, please answer the question. Sorry, Mr. Lam Tai Fai. Now, a member has asked for a ruling. Don't you think that you need to rule on the matter first? I have already made a decision. Members, you need to rule as to whether Mr. Wong used offensive language. It's not time for you to speak, Mr. Lam Tai Fai. Members, please let the CS4A answer the question asked by Mr. Wong Yuk-man. Thank you, Mr. President. In his question, Mr. Wong Yuk-man made certain assumptions, saying that later on, the members of the public may hold a certain position or may have certain views. I don't intend to comment on what he is forecasting, but I certainly believe that the members of the public are rational and pragmatic. The community at large will agree that for this very solemn issue, we must vigorously follow the rules and the laws instead of being very sort of imaginative and talk about something which goes against the legal principles. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong. Mr. President, I won't say anything else to insult the lackeys. Please ask your question. CS4A. How come that you can foretell that there won't be another de facto referendum again in the 5 districts? If the de facto referendum has such an outcome, which is true, is a true reflection of the views, if that does happen, which side would you take? Are you going to be on the side of public opinion, or are you going to stick to the text of the document? CS4A, I don't think what Mr. Leung Kwok-hong has referred to is part of my statement, so I don't think I need to clarify. Why not? Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, please take your seat. The CS4A has already answered your question. Mr. President, please ask her to clarify and point out which part is not. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, I've already said that we still have a few more months, and then you will have many opportunities, either in this chamber or on other occasions, to raise your question. So please take your seat. Mr. Chan, Mr. President, every time when we have a consultation on political reform, we find that it is a delusive exercise. We are being deceived. it is fake consultation. I must talk about that. We have been deceived many times. Li Fei came and then he set the framework for political reform. He has already stated certain prerequisites for the political reform. For the consultation exercise to take place here, it means that we are being sort of restricted by the framework laid down for us. To ascertain the public opinion, the best way is to have a referendum. Please ask a question. I'm asking a question about referendum. Will the government resort to referendum to decide on what the public want? If you don't have public referendum, does it mean that you would like to have the revolution of judgment before you would be willing to listen to public opinions? Let me explain. Earlier on, we have invited Mr. Li Fei and Mr. Zhang Rongsheng to come to Hong Kong because they're familiar with the basic law, so they will be of assistance when we start this round of consultation. It is not the same as Mr. Li Fei came and set the framework for us. In fact, the framework has already been clearly spelled out in the basic law. So Mr. Albert Chen doesn't have to worry. We are being sincere in our exercise. For the referendum, I think the public reaction was clear to everybody. Mr. Raymond Chen, Mr. President, Mr. Li Fei gave a speech. 9 lines of words were devoted to ways to decide on the composition of the NC in his 17-page speech. But then for the 7 issues, he referred to the number of candidates. Now, in paragraph 15, there are a number of key issues, but nothing is mentioned about the maximum number of candidates for the post of CE. Do you think that there is no need to impose a cap? CS4A, I've made it time and again. In my statement, I've only set out some issues, the key issues, to facilitate your understanding of this consultation exercise. Well, for issues other than key issues, we'll still be having an open and inclusive approach in listening to your views. In a consultation document, you'll be able to see that we have included views already expressed recently, like the number of candidates to run for the post of the CE. Mr. Yu Siwing. Thank you, Mr. President. For the selection of the CE and the formation of the Legislative Council, will the administration communicate with the U.S. government and the UK government so as to understand their views? This is for A. The answer is in the negative. This is because for political reform and the design of the political structure, it is something internal for Hong Kong, and it is also the constitutional duty of the central authorities. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, I want to have genuine universal suffrage. I want something which is entirely in line with the framework of the basic law. I want genuine universal suffrage within that framework. The CS4A said that in the coming 5 months, she's going to listen more to the views of the people, and she would like to narrow the differences, and she would like to forge the consensus. Maybe in this community, not many people are thoroughly familiar with the basic law. Please ask a question. When you receive the views from the public, would you at the same time familiarize the public with the basic law? Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your suggestion. Indeed, we will do this work. In fact, since our handover, we have been promoting the basic law. On my part, I'm also the chairman of the steering committee on the promotion of the basic law. And on this occasion, we are talking about the political development within the basic law. So it is worthwhile to have further discussion with the committee about the basic law provisions. Ms. Terry Lee, time and again, when you gave answers, CS4A, you said that implementing universal suffrage is both a legal issue as well as a political issue. You need to gather public support. There is also this real question of getting 2/3 majority from the LegCo members. What plans have you got to make sure that there will be rational discussion among the lawmakers, and what plans have you got to approach the public and listen to their views? CS4A, well, like the SARG, the lawmakers have also got a constitutional duty. We hope that we can finish the 5-step process so that in 2017 we can have universal suffrage for the selection of the CE. We attach a lot of importance to the views of the LegCo, and therefore I've chosen to come at the first instance to speak to the Legislative Council. And after this, I'm going to meet with the press together with the SJ as well as the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs. There will be further occasions of exchange of views. I understand that under the chairmanship of Mr. Tam Yu Chung, probably the Constitutional Affairs panel is going to make special arrangements. And if you would like to arrange for meetings, I will certainly be attending the meetings as to tie in with your work.
Besides today, I also sent a letter to the chairman of the House Committee as well as deputy chairman in the hope that they can help me coordinate in January 4 dinner gatherings. Why is it that even for dinner gatherings I have to trouble the chairman and deputy chairman of the House Committee? Because I'd like to have a healthy platform for communication on these occasions so that we won't have any differences among various political parties. So for each of those 4 dinner gatherings, we'll have LegCo members from different political affiliation in order that there will be more interaction and communication. As for the general public, starting from today, we'll start our publicity and promotion work. We have APIs from the government, leaflets, TV and radio programs, and we'll use other interactive media to communicate with the public. Arrangements are being made. In this exercise, I particularly emphasize young people because our future is in the next generation. Because by 2017, some of our secondary students may become electors. So we would like to communicate more with them. So for LegCo members here, for your professional bodies and political parties, if you would like to have more discussion and studies with us, we're very willing to cope. The 3 of us have put this as a top priority on our diaries. So we'll try as far as possible to cope with your work. Mr. Chung Kok Pan. Thank you, Mr. President. In paragraph 22 of the statement of the CS, it is said that she hoped the differences can be narrowed step by step and consensus forged bit by bit. If consensus cannot be forged bit by bit, differences cannot be narrowed step by step, and the formation and selection methods cannot be found, and we remain status quo, what will the CS do? CS? President, if what mentioned by Mr. Chung is to happen, the onus will not just fall on the SARG. I think members of the public have very high aspirations of the 2017 CE election. They want universal suffrage. If we're not going to have universal suffrage, then, and we will remain status quo, the whole society will have to pay a price. All members of the public will be very disappointed. And then in future, in terms of the stability of the economy and politics of Hong Kong, there will be uncertainties and non-conducive factors. So we would like to see the greatest accommodation and pragmatism on the part of members so that we can finish our work. As I said at the end of my statement, we would like to narrow our differences and forge consensus, such that for the general public, they won't end up having no universal consensus suffrage for the CE election and became very disappointed. Mr. Dennis Kwok, I seem to have heard from the CS that the election committee's decision will have to be referred to. But I think the word used by the NPCSC is ho, that means may. I would like myself to have heard you wrongly, so I'd like you to clarify this point. CS for administration. President, Mr. Kwok was correct. In the 2007 decision, it said that the nominating committee can make reference to the existing method and composition of the present establishment. But for officials with deep knowledge about this, they have made it clear that by taking reference, it means with a very general reference and support. And this is also manifested in the Basic Law provisions. And in Annex 1 of the Basic Law, broad representation is the term used as well. So in order to have broad representation and to take reference from the election committee on the part of the nominating committee will give us a higher chance of adhering to the Basic Law. Mr. Wong Kok-kin, in paragraph 15 of the statement of the CS, 7 major issues and principles are set out. If we can forge consensus with these 7 key issues attained, then of course we can work out a preliminary scheme for the LegCo to pass. But if in the course of discussion, views are very different and no consensus is forged, how will the administration select an option for submission to the LegCo? CS? Thank you, President. I can only say that the government will try its very best to strive for this very complicated issue to attain the broadest consensus, such that when we go to the third step with broad consensus, with a certain chance of having a two-thirds majority support from the LegCo members, will be able to submit such a scheme to the LegCo. But whether or not eventually that is passed depends on the individual decisions of LegCo members. Mr. Lam Tai Fai, Mr. President, just now colleagues asked about paragraph 15 of the statement. That is, why not put patriotism and love for Hong Kong and assessment criteria as well? But of course, we're told that we all understand what that means. But Mr. Chow Xiaoyang said a number of times, there are different norms for patriotism and love for Hong Kong. There's no hard and fast rule about the definition of patriotism and love for Hong Kong. Many people who want to join the election say that they are patriotic and love Hong Kong. But those were false allegations. Please ask your question. If there's no broad, in-depth consultation amongst members of the public to seek consensus and criteria, then how can the CPG guarantee that a person who is patriotic and loves Hong Kong be elected as the CE? The wisdom of the CPG may not be different, may not be the same as the wisdom of the nominating committee. CS? As I said, patriotism and love for Hong Kong have already been manifested in the Basic Law as the basic spirit. If Mr. Lam Tai Fai wants to know the standard for patriotism and love for Hong Kong, I can share with Mr. Lam that in 1984, Mr. Deng Xiaoping already mentioned that, and recently when Mr. Li Fei came to Hong Kong, in answering a question, he also repeated the 3 conditions. First, respect one's nation. Second, sincerely support our sovereign state, motherland, and the exercise of sovereignty over Hong Kong. And third, not damaging Hong Kong's stability and prosperity. Well, prima facie, these 3 principles are not difficult to understand. The general public, the LegCo members, and nominating committee members, I believe, can master these 3 principles very easily. Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, originally, the cleverest way to ask these questions is that hypothetical questions won't attract hypothetical answers. Please ask your question. Mr. Wang Yongman asked a question, but the CS disregarded that. But Mr. Chung Kok Pan also asked a hypothetical question. That is, if there are still differences, if consensus does not exist, what will you do? I thought that she would not answer it, but she differentiated between those who are close to the government and those who are not. Ms. Claudia Mo, please immediately ask your question. My question is, yes, how can you convince Hong Kong people that this consultation exercise is honest and true and sincere, and you won't differentiate those who are close to you and those who are not? can you ensure that this is not a hindrance competition, so to speak, a hindrance match? You pose obstacles. Well, I think Ms. Mo is targeting my statement. I said just now that we don't want to have differentiation among political parties. We would like to communicate with all the 70 electoral members. We would like to establish mutual trust in the hope that we can attain consensus. Mr. Chen Kam-lam. Thank you, President. In paragraph 17 of the statement of the CS, it is said that they would communicate with different sectors of the community and listen to them directly. And just now when the CS answered Ms. Tari Lee's question, she said that 4 dinner gatherings would be organized in the electoral building. Why does the CS choose this form of communication with electoral members? Would you choose another form of communication other than banqueting with electoral members?
If I may clarify, this dinner gatherings won't happen in this council building. I will be the host, so this will take place at the Chief Secretary's residence. This is not the only means of communication. It's just that in an informal ambience where there's no pressure, there could be communication across parties. But if Mr. Chen can come up with other suggestion, I would be more than happy to listen to that. That's the end of questions.